And just as she got out of the park and onto 191 and then turned onto this highway, 3 otter came from the north side of the road going towards the lake, which I've never seen otter that far away from water.
Wow,
They just, you know.
That means they're moving back in, and so if we can bring more water and rain in,
Yep.
they'll start getting back in their natural habitat.
Beavers too.
Wow. So you're really watching that stuff. That's this information we're hoping to provide to the rest of humanity, that if we do these ceremonies and bring water and rain, the animals will just start coming back in and populate their numbers again. It's rising. We're good. We're going. Maybe you could help us understand what's going on with the wolf from your perspective.
I want to talk about buffalo.
Okay, buffalo.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I've been involved with the buffalo issue since April of 1992. And my companion just loved the buffalo from the first time he ever came out to Yellowstone in 1967. And I think nothing upsets me more, because Phil was an avid hunter. Nothing except upsets me more than how the hunters of this state and Fish, Wildlife and Parks have just ignored the plight of the buffalo. Fish, Wildlife and Parks has given up all their power to the Department of Livestock, as have the other agencies that are signatories to the Interagency Bison Mismanagement Plan. But it's the hunters who just don't see what's really going on in the larger picture. And during the 2005 legislative session, the Montana Wildlife Federation had a Hunter Appreciation Day in the rotunda of the Capitol in Helena. And we went there, and we had these big signs. One was a picture of a buffalo asking, "Where is my habitat?" And the next was a picture of a hunter asking, "Where is my buffalo?" Because no buffalo came out of the park for a whole month during the hunting season. And then we had our big banner that said, "No habitat, no hunt." And we are not anti-hunters. I am not an anti-hunter. I am known as Butchering Babe. I help all the hunters in camp to butcher their meat so that we could feed our numerous volunteers.
That stuff in your pocket,
Mm.
I'm hearing that, so.
I'm sorry. Okay, I guess I'll have to talk with my hands again.
That's nice.
And I remember saying to the head of the Montana Wildlife Federation, which in 1999 took very strong pro-buffalo stances and then became silent, especially after Schweitzer became the governor. And I asked him why they're not speaking out. And he basically said, well, you know, this is a political football and it's a hot potato. And I said, you know, what's going to happen is the DOL is going to come after the elk. Oh no, that'll never happen. That'll never happen. And yesterday I get an urgent message from the Montana Wildlife Federation about this plan that's been proposed and will be discussed at the the Board of Livestock meeting on Tuesday and Wednesday, and they basically want to go after the elk, just like they're going after the buffalo. They want to vaccinate all the wildlife in Yellowstone, and then, with respect to the buffalo, they want to test them as they're coming out of the park, and those that test negative for brucellosis will be allowed on public lands, but the cows will be sterilized. Now, this is really getting nuts. And all of a sudden, the Montana Wildlife Federation is up in arms about the Board of Livestock taking over bison management of wildlife when they've been doing it for 10 years under this plan, and nobody has stood up for the buffalo except Buffalo Field Campaign and the Gallatin Wildlife Association, which is a chapter of the Montana Wildlife Federation. They're a hunter sportsman's group, and they're the only hunter sportsman's group in the state that have come out against the hunt. You know, with every other wildlife species, you have habitat being established, then you establish a resident herd, then you do a percentage, which becomes hunting licenses of what can be taken, what can be killed in 1 year, so that you're not decimating the herd. And all of the wildlife is under the auspices of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And they have reneged on their responsibility to wildlife with regard to buffalo, because it is such a political hot potato. They don't want the target on their backs. But what's happening is the Department of Livestock, as the other agencies have given up their power, become more aggressive. You see the same thing on the federal level with, we still haven't impeached Bush. It's like, and here you have this microcosm of the larger political scene. And I'm just hoping that when the word gets out this week as to what the Board of Livestock, what the Stock Growers Association and the Farm Bureau are proposing, that the hunters in this state go nuts, because elk hunting is huge, huge bucks for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We get lots and lots of out-of-state hunters because we have, such a rich environment for elk. In the first year of the hunt, we've had 3 hunts. The first year of the hunt, every buffalo that came out on the west side was shot. And I take the position, I'm a real hardliner about the hunt. And I don't give a damn if it's a white state hunter, if it's a tribal treaty hunter. It's wrong at this point. It's just wrong. And I would like to see all the hunters, including the tribal hunters, come together in support of wild, free-ranging buffalo that are managed by wildlife biologists and not livestock veterinarians who don't know a damn thing about buffalo. They just don't. And I just get very upset that it's going on for so long, and I think that this year with the enormity of the kill by the agencies, by the hunters. You know, it came to over 1,700. 166 of them were hunts by both the state hunters and 2 tribes. And the rest was done by the Park Service. 10 died in captivity. 6 were killed right outside of the park, trying to get, they were on public land that we, taxpayers, had bought as habitat. And so we killed a lot. And all of a sudden you see all of these agencies joining up with Buffalo Field Campaign and Gallatin Wildlife Association and Hobnob, which is the group on the butte, on Horse Butte, where there are no cattle, and people have signs in their windows, Buffalo Safe Zone, you know, and they have a huge, huge issue because everybody else's private property rights are protected in this state. You know, it's a very Republican state, except for theirs, because the Department of Livestock claims that they can go and trespass on people's private property because this is a disease issue. And the buffalo in Montana are not defined as wildlife, they are defined as an animal in need of disease control. So we have a lot to do in the legislature this year, and now we have the support and coming together of the National Resources Defense Council, Hobnob, Gallatin Wildlife Association, Rosalie Little Thunder and her 7th generation group, and the Intertribal Bison Cooperative, which has, you know, until I think Jim Stone took over, has always been kind of like the rancher's position rather than the wildlife position. And I think we're seeing a real positive shift, and hopefully in my lifetime this is going to change, you know. And it didn't in Phil's lifetime, and his dying words to Mike and to Doug Peacock and to myself were, you keep after those bastards. You know, we need wild, free buffalo that are then eventually hunted under fair chase. And, you know, I think that if you had that kind of environment for buffalo, they've become a little bit more scared off by people. Right now there's, you know, there's no predator on them except during this 3-month hunt. And then there are the predators from the DOL. When you see and experience a helicopter chasing these pregnant cows, chasing these cows that have just given birth with the afterbirth hanging out, and this little wet calf who can barely stand, and they're being hazed with a helicopter, that's not fair chase. That is definitely not fair chase. And it is an aggression against wildlife that the people of Montana have allowed the state to get away with. And the people of the country have allowed the Park Service to get away with. And I know biologists in both of those departments who have been internally fighting to pull out of the plan because they don't want to be part of that. They weren't trained to kill buffalo. They don't want to be killing buffalo. the DOL definitely wants to be killing buffalo, and you see them doing it, you know, with this relish. They're just so excited. They're like, little boys with their toys. And so I hope that the buffalo are going to get some support from the people of Montana, from the tribes, and from the people of America, because they are sacred animals and they belong to all of us, not just Montana. And that's what. And now I have to go right to the head of the Montana Wildlife Federation and say, Craig, I told you so. And they've done that in Wyoming. They have a program of capture, kill, and test on elk. And again, they have a real disease problem because of the feed grounds. So everybody wants them to capture, kill, and test, but nobody wants to cut off the source of the disease, which are the feed grounds. And this past week, the Forest Service renewed for the next 20 years the feed grounds in Wyoming. And they're not going to stop doing that and letting the livestock interests dominate this discussion and this policy until chronic wasting disease comes in and wipes out everything, And frankly, the people in the Department of Livestock, they would love for chronic wasting disease to come here and wipe out the buffalo and the elk, because they're into this fantasy of blaming the wildlife for the brucellosis when elk have, in fact, transmitted brucellosis to cattle in Wyoming. The cattle, the elk were being moved off some, I think, private land, and they couldn't be put on public land because the Forest Service didn't have weed-free hay to feed them. And so they were put on a cattle ranch with cattle there. Cattle get the brucellosis, they're all killed, we all wind up through our federal bucks paying this rancher. And we've endangered both species. So, sometimes, I'm sitting on my porch and I'm looking out at paradise here, and I think, how can we live in such a beautiful, beautiful place that has such ugly, ugly policies towards wildlife? How can we do that? Why aren't we looking at buffalo on the landscape? And you drive down into the Madison Valley, and it's beautiful buffalo habitat. And there's plenty of it that's public land. And the ranchers just have so much power in this state that we can spend millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to buy wildlife habitat, and it's okay for the elk and the deer and the bears and the fox and the wolves to be on this land. And when the buffalo go on the land, they're hazed off. And there's something very upside down about this whole situation, and all I know is that I will continue to push whatever way I can to have the state pull out of this plan, have authority be put back into the hands of the wildlife biologists in Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And all of this money is coming out of the federal government. Every year, 2.3 million. Every year it goes up. You know, they always seem to have money for these really aggressive, hostile things. You know, we can pay for war, invasions. We can invade the buffalo, and the feds always seem to have money for this. And that's why we have to get our constituents all over the country to put pressure on Congress. And it may not work this year, but maybe with the new Congress, we have some really good allies in the Congress to get this money stopped. There's a wonderful man who worked for either Fish, Wildlife, and Parks or the Forest Service for like 30 years. Just a great guy. He's head of the American Bison Foundation. His name is Joe Gutowski, and at every meeting I've ever gone to, and Joe's always there, he stands up and says, the problem is, and he talks very calmly, very slowly, the problem is you all, and he's pointing to the 5 agency heads, the signatories to this mismanagement plan, you all are sucking off the federal tit. And Montana, being a poor state, couldn't find $2.3 million to do these aggressions against the buffalo. So we've got a number of ways to attack this, this mismanagement, with other groups suddenly becoming aware and supporting us, and you know, helping spreading the word to a larger constituency than we at Buffalo Field Campaign have. My companion, Phil, was the original Vidiot. He started the first MFA program in video art at the Art Institute of Chicago in 1970. And since he had no budget, he bought 15 cameras for his graduate students out of his own pocket. And he said, go out there and make your own. And that was his religion. And his second religion was copy it right. So much of his work is in the public domain. And we met Mike a week after he got here. And we were so excited that Mike was going to document it, because like the war we can't see, like the dead bodies that we can't see coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, we're not allowed to see what really goes on unless BFC's footage gets on TV. And one of the most powerful things was when the buffalo went through the ice. And I don't know if you've looked at that video yet, but they were crossing at the Narrows. There was a herd of about 55 being hazed by snowmobiles, and 14 of them fell through the ice. 2 of them got out right away, and the other 12 struggled for hours while they were trying to decide, the agencies were trying to decide how to save the buffalo. You know, which the easiest way to save the buffalo is to goddamn leave them alone and not haze them. And 2 of the buffalo wound up drowning. And, you know, we have our footage on the website. Danny Brister, our project director, took a photograph that was on the front page of every newspaper in Montana except the Missoulian. And it went all over the country. It just went viral over the internet. And the head of the Department of Livestock at that time said that it's very possible that they just fell through the ice on their own. Now, before you mentioned that I seem to be a close wildlife watcher. Well, when that lake is frozen, any animals going across, I don't care if it's elk, if it's deer, buffalo, they walk single file. And here they were being pushed as a mob, and of course their weight. And it was the only time since Phil died that I was happy he wasn't here, because I'm just positive he would have gone out and done something that would have gotten him jailed, because the fury that they did this and then wouldn't take responsibility for doing this when everyone knew that they were lying. And when you watch the footage, at the end of the footage, when they get, there's this one cow that they got up and out of, you know, and they put ropes around them and hauled them out with snowmobiles, and after all of this violence, and they've been in the water for 3-4 hours freezing, and you could see on the video their hair is just shaking. Their eyes are like popping. This is January 12th, you know. It isn't September 12th when the waters are a little warmer. And they're just shaking, and they get this cow out, and this DOL agent goes over and kicks her in the ass. And it's like, can't you let her catch her breath? You know, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And we've just got to stop all of our nastiness, whether it be to buffalo and elk and wolves and grizzly bears, Iraqis, Afghanis, and probably within the next couple of months, Iranians. We are just such an aggressive people. We have just lost so much touch with our sense of compassion and humanity, and generosity. I'll never forget it. About 8 years ago, 200 buffalo sat down on 7 Mile Bridge in the park on a Sunday afternoon at around 4 o'clock. And we happened to be right near a pull-off, so we pulled off, and in the van we have a stove, and so we made a pot of coffee. And by 12:30 that night, when the buffalo finally decided to move off the road, we had made about 4 or 5 pots of coffee. People had recognized our van. They came over. And the next day I was working downtown. And the next day, these people were complaining that they got stuck in a buffalo jam. And I said, you know, we paved the roads that the buffalo made for us. They found the easiest way out along the rivers, and then we came in and paved the roads. So this is their land. We're the intruders, you know. And I am not a person who believes that people shouldn't be part of the landscape, but we've got to be part of the landscape in a non-aggressive way. We have to be humble that we're not the big kahuna. You know, when you go hiking up that draw, you know the odds of meeting a grizzly bear are very real because that's the grizzly's land. And we come in and intrude with our backpacks and our cameras and hopefully not cell phones and radios. And we have to learn how to live side by side. You live in grizzly bear country, you have to have bear-proof garbage containers. You go camping, you have to hang your food 100 feet from where you're sleeping. You know, if you want to be safe, you know, or, you know, this guy in the park was just attacked in the middle of the night by a bear. And he had done everything right. You know, sometimes it's just going to be a bear walking along and, you know, you're in the wrong place or he's in the wrong place. And if you want to protect yourself from wildlife, don't live in wildlife country. You want to protect yourself, your cattle from brucellosis, don't bring in susceptible cows. You know? And don't distort the science, you know. Today there's an article in the paper that quotes the state vet that they've done something like 1,600 cows, tested 1,600 cows that had some proximity to this latest herd that wound up having Montana probably going to lose its brucellosis-free status. And he's saying, well, the cows didn't do it, so that means that the elk did it. Without any science. Without any science. And they get away with it because the reporters don't know. You know, you have some reporters who followed the issue for 20 years. They know that's a lie. But newbie reporters, they don't know. AP reporters from, you know, South Dakota don't know. It's a lie. You know. I just feel very sad.